the edge of the land of the dead are the ruins of Akka. There is a small enclave of the living here, smugglers and adventurers that have learned to avoid the black fleets of the dead that mindlessly patrol the waters hereabouts. This is the starting point for Sister Nova Custodes and her companions. Beyond the enclave, the Blue Nun has found evidence of a subterranean library. Although its door is barred, the key is rumored to have been hidden nearby. If she can find this library, she can use it as a permanent base and build a stronghold for the cult of Sigmar from which to strike the foul enemies of man.
So, the Blue Nun and her team have to get into this dungeon in the center of the table, the steps leading down. However, to get in, they must first find the key that will open the door. The key will be in one of 4 treasure chests scattered across the map. Every time they open a chest, on a roll of 10 plus, there will be a key inside. Also, at the end of each round, on an 11 plus, a skeleton will erupt out of the ground in a random direction and also at a random distance from the central dungeon. So time is of the essence, because those skeletons will build up over time. And the final wrinkle is from the Badlands, 3 goblin scouts from Two-Lumps' tribe have come there looking for the same thing. So they will have to deal with goblins, skellies, and also time. And we start with round 1 initiative. Blue dice is the nun's dice. And the goblins win initiative with a 17/4. And the 3 goblins are entering from the east into the ruins. Goblins have a movement of 5, so for their first activation, they just march straight in. And then on their second activation, they split up with the archer heading up the stairs to the second level so we can get a better overview of the battle. Now it's the Blue Nun's team's activation, and she's going to try and cast Shield on the Templar. Templar's going to be the main bashing unit, we hope. And she needs a 8 plus, or a 10 plus, sorry, and gets a 7. If she'd run it, he would have got a +2 armor. She fails it. So, no luck there. But with his faith in Sigmar, he doesn't care, and he advances his movement towards the goblins, moving between the archers. And our Apprentice Adolf casts Shield on the Templar and succeeds with a 15, only needing a 12. So our Templar is now shielded by the power of Sigmar. His armor value's gone up to 14, which is 1 below the maximum of 15. And so our Imperial agents use their second activation just to ruck forward half their movement. We then check to see if any of the undead skellies have been attracted to the movement. We get one on an 11 plus, we roll a 10, so we're good. And on to round 2, and after the initiative roll, goblins go first again. First activation, the goblin archer is going to race up the stairs to get an overview and start moving into a firing range of everything. And the other 2 goblins are wondering, do they take the initiative? But goblins being kinda cowards, what they decide to do is bunch up together and receive the Templar's charge next turn. And then on their second activation, the goblin archer is going to move towards the edge so he can see better, which is kind of scary, and the other 2 huddle together and wait for the Templar to come at them. On the Blue Nun's activation, she decides to cast Enchant Armor, which she succeeds. That brings our Templar up to the maximum armor he can have, which is a 15. that's going to make him, hopefully, tough enough. For the rest of the turn, the nun, her apprentice Adolf, they move forward. The Templar stands still. I believe he's waiting to see if he can get another spell from them. Maybe get his attack up. We'll see. But that's how it ends at the end of that round. Now it's time to roll if we have attracted any more skeletons. 11 or plus, and we rolled an 11. A skeleton is going to burst out of the ground. To find out where, we roll a scatter dice and 2d6 inches from the central dungeon, which would put our skelly about here. So this is our overhead at the beginning of the next turn. Everybody's being horribly cautious, but I feel that that's about to change. And it's on to round 3 initiative, and the Blue Nun finally beats the goblins at initiative. And holding his hammer high with a great yell to Sigmar, the Templar finally lets loose and charges into the 2 goblins, huddling together, scared of the big man with a hammer. As he charges in to attack, the spellcasters look at casting Blinding Light. The Blue Nun has a line of sight blocked to the goblins by the archposts. But Adolf, the apprentice, has a clear shot at casting Blinding Light on one of the goblins. He attempts his cast and he makes it. One of those goblins now has the effects of Blinding Light, which is a movement of 1 and 0 attack factor. The Templar swings his hammer, but scores less than the goblins. So the goblins win this round of combat. What they do not do is get through his armor, so he takes no damage, neither do the goblins. And while that combat is taking place, the Blue Nun and her apprentice move forward, and hopefully to threaten the skelly. We'll see. And it's the goblin's activation, so we're going to roll off. He's shooting into combat to see which one it flies towards, and it is the Templar. And although he was aiming at the right target, he does miss the Templar, so no damage is done as the arrow sails past him. And with everyone activated, it's the end of the round. We'll roll to see if we get any new skellies bursting out, and we do not. It's all quiet on the skelly front. Although we did forget to move the one skelly we have, so I'm going to take care of that now. He's going to move towards the nearest thing he can see, which is the Templar and the goblins. So that's that, end of the round, and on to the next one. And we roll for round 4 initiative. And the goblins win 8-3. So they go first. And the goblin activation starts with the archer. On an 11 plus, he hits the Templar. So he's shooting at a goblin. Got a 5. And he hits the goblin with a 19 over a 17. So that's bad news, Mr. Goblin. Don't fire into combat. 10 points gets past his armor, which is more than enough to kill our goblin. And the goblin and the Templar have a round of combat, which the Templar loses. I didn't film it, sorry. And he loses 3 hit points against the goblin that's left. This is criminal footage on this goblin who just shot his mate. So, back to the Blue Nun's activation, and she attempts to cast Heal on the Templar, which is a line of sight range of 6 inches, which she succeeds with a 15. And the Templar gets his hit points back up to full. And for his turn, Adolf, the apprentice, is going to move across in support of the Templar and the Blue Nun. We have a goblin with a bow and arrow to the right and the skeleton in front. Both sides fully activated. It's now time for the skeleton to move, and he is going to, because of his movement, he can move either here, but second, he can get into combat because he's within the 1 inch, so he can snap to combat, forcing a Mexican standoff. Roll to see who he attacks, and then on an 11 plus, he attacks the goblin. And the goblin it is. So we roll combat roll, and black is the skelly, and that's a 20 to 5. That is enough to kill the poor goblin. So round 5 initiative, and the goblin archer goes first. At this point the goblin's regretting shooting his mate in the back, but now he hasn't got a dog in the fight, he's going to shoot into combat. 11 plus he gets a Templar, but with a 9 he's shooting at the skelly. So, and then the goblin's a 13 on the black dice, 15, the arrow sails past the skelly doing no damage. So with the goblin's turn done, the Blue Nun's turn starts, and she's really starting to think about the endgame, getting bogged down here with skellies and goblins. So she moves over to the left of the battlefield, and we'll just move the camera here, there we go, because where she's aiming for, there is a lockbox on those stairs that may have a key on it on 11 plus, which then she can just go in, open the dungeon and be done. Adolf the Apprentice is going to cast teleport himself up next to the goblin, and he rolls a 20, which is a success. So teleport is line of sight, and he can see the goblin, so he's going to teleport right next to the goblin, stop him throwing arrows. Blink! Alright, so now it's time for the Templar to smack the skelly on the head. So the Templar gets a 9 plus 4, which is 13, but the skelly's got a 15 plus 1, which is a 16. Skelly wins that combat, and this Templar is not doing so well. So Templar has an armor of 15, which is the maximum with all the stuff added to him, so a point gets through to him. With that round over, we now roll to see if a skelly pops out of the ground, and one does, over 11 plus. So we got a roll. It's going to be that direction, 8 inches from the central dungeon, which puts it on the grand table of things right here, in front of the Blue Nun. You couldn't even write this in a script. So suddenly it squirts out of the ground right in her path. And it's on to round 6 initiative, which, again, the goblins win. And the goblin's fighting for his life against Adolf the Apprentice. And during the combat, yep, Adolf wins, and with an 11 he has no pluses, and goblin armor at 10, 1 point gets through on the goblin. Meanwhile, the Templar is struggling with a skeleton. The skeleton gets in a good old stab with his spear. With a plus 1, that's 17 get through, which is armor 15, that's another 2 points get hit on the Templar. Meanwhile, the Blue Nun, she's going to cast teleport on herself to get her out of there. She needs an 8, but rolls a 2. She is screwed. She's going nowhere. And with that, the skelly charges into the Nun, and close combat ensues. The Nun, still disappointed with her casting, cannot defend herself, but the skeleton fails to get through her armor. Her only piece of luck this round is that no new skellies came out of the ground with a roll of 5. And with round 7, this can still go either way. The Blue Nun gets a break and goes first. And Adolf's bronze hammer comes down upon the goblin's head, but doesn't get through its cranium. So both low score, and nothing gets through the armor for this round of combat. And a similar situation with the Templar and the Skelly. The Skelly wins the combat round, but does not get through the Templar's armor. And to reinforce the fact that Sigmar isn't watching any of this, the Blue Nun also fails to get any kind of result. Again, the only good piece of luck this round is that another skelly did not pop out of the ground, and this is not going to hold.
It's rather exciting.
Round 8, and the Blue Nun wins the initiative. And up on the stonework, Adolf is finding out how aggressive goblins can be. This goblin's fighting through his life and actually manages to wound Adolf again. The Templar finally girds his loins and takes a massive swing at the skeleton's head. The great hammer gets all through his armour and takes his head right off. And in the meanwhile, the Blue Nun is playing shove back with the Skelly on her side of the map, but there again is a stalemate. And because it's the end of the round, we have to see if another Skelly pops up, and a roll of a 20, we get another Skelly. Now, 2d6 in the direction puts it 5 inches back right. Right in the ruins in the eye line of the Templar, right by the box he was going for. Again, I don't think you could script this stuff. And straight into round 9, goblins get the initiative, and the fight on the balcony is still hitting a stalemate. Meanwhile, for the Blue Nun, things are not going well. A 17 to 13 gives her 7 points of damage through her armour. That is half of her hit points gone. This might be a very short campaign indeed. Trying to break this stalemate and actually win the scenario by getting to the dungeon with the key is the Templar. He's going to charge the box and the Skelly and just pray to Sigmar that there's a key in that box. The Skelly charges the Templar, but the Templar senses that the Nun's in trouble and gives a massive swing. With a +4, that gets through the Skelly and out the other side. And turn 10, because there's still a goblin, we get to roll initiative, which the goblin of course wins. However, Adolf's bronze hammer comes down on his head again, and this time does damage. Sadly not enough to kill the goblin, but does make him a little bit dizzy. Next to activate is the Templar, who sees his chance and runs for the box to see if the key's in there. The key's available on a 10 plus on a d20, and we get a 12, so the Templar has the key. Of course, all this is in vain if the Blue Nun dies, but she gets a massive hit in on the skeleton. So the skeleton now just falls apart in front of her after a hit, and a way is open. Luckily, no fresh skeletons spawned, and during the initiative, the Blue Nun wins. Meanwhile, Adolf and the goblin are still grappling up on the balcony, and it doesn't matter how much he fights, that goblin is always going to bite back, and Adolf loses another 3 hit points, bringing him down to below half of his hit points. And the Blue Nun, hearing Adolf's cry of pain, moves over towards his direction so that she can aid him, either with heals or fightings. But the Templar's already saved the day. He has the key, and with his activation he races to the dungeon. And with that, they win the scenario and the movie fades to black.
Alrighty, I just finished my first ever game of Frostgrave in the Warhammer world, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it. Played solo, and you'll have to forgive me, I didn't have time to get everything painted up. We'll be doing that over time, so not all of the terrain is painted. But the basic scenario was that the Blue Nun and her 2 henchmen make it to the basement library to set up base. Every turn there's a chance of skeletons erupting out of the ground. But it went really well. If you see there's some rule discrepancies, like the 1-inch pushback and stuff that I didn't really use, it's because I wanted to get a feel for the flow of the game. So this is really kind of an introductory run through so that I can... It's been edited down, and I had to keep going back and forth to the book and checking stuff, and I'm sure I left stuff out. So all you veteran Frostgrave people out there, forgive me, but I will get there. But yes, it was really enjoyable, and here's a little thing. The last 3 rounds, because I came back to it, I ran it and I forgot to push record on the camera. Now, in that 3-round ending, this game can be swingy. Both the Blue Nun and her apprentice Adolf died. The Templar found the key, made it, ended the scenario. So then I would have had to roll if they actually died or if they were just injured, which could have ended the campaign there. I had the choice of reenacting that for the camera, but that would have looked too contrived. So I thought, well, shit, just run those 3 rounds again, and which is the 3 rounds you saw. So it is very... Some people have complained that this game's too swingy, but I like it. I like the danger. There's always that danger that you are going to get really, really hurt on any combat. And that makes combat a lot more, a lot more tense and suspenseful. So you kind of, as I get more used to it and I figure out strategies and tactics, and, they're going to get XP from every game, but also the scenarios are going to be built around that. So because I'm playing these mostly solo, there's got to be that time pressure. For example, the skeletons coming up out of the ground. So I'm looking forward to this series, and I already have the next scenario kind of in my head. She'll have a full crew because she's got the money. So hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching.